In round 6 of the Sinquefield Cup, both Fabiano and Jan were desperate for a win. They were on 2.5 out of 5, trailing behind Alireza on 3.5 out of 5 already. So Fabiano picked an opening that he doesn't usually play, but one that's well known to be fighting for the win, the Sicilian Dragon. And here, actually, it's the accelerated dragon version. So Jan could play the Marozzi bind with c4. And you tend to get very solid positions where white has a small edge. But Jan, being a real fighter and also wanting to win, he decided to opt for the mainline dragon instead with knight c3. And a couple moves later, the stage is set for a real battle in the mainline dragon. Now, in this position, Fabiano picks a move that is not super common with queen a5. And the normal response after queen a5 would be queen d2 and potentially trading off the knight to get rid of the control on e6 so that black can play the bishop to e6. And this would be a theoretical battle here. But instead, Jan very quickly in this position, he played the very strange move queen to d3. Now the queen almost always ends on d2 for two reasons. One is because a standard plan is to go bishop h6 to trade off this bishop and play for checkmate. But the other reason is queen on d3 can often be hit by knights. For example, if knight comes to e5, that will hit the queen. Or another common plan is in the Sicilian is knight to d7 to c5. And then this queen would have to move again. But Jan played this super fast. You can see in the clock preparation that this is his preparation. And Fabiano was caught surprised, and he had a really long think after this move. And interestingly, after knight d7, planning knight c5, now the engine suggests one of the top moves is queen back to d2. And you could argue that black's been mind gamed here, because you get the same position, but with the knight on d7 instead of f6. And you could argue that this knight is worse on d7. Sure, the knight can still come to c5, but now you're not hitting me with a fork. I can keep the bishop for now with bishop d5. And this position, potentially white has an edge. It's an unconventional position, but I expect this is potentially a position Jan was aiming for. Now, Fabi instead, he played very principled with knight to e5. And Jan just retreated with queen d2, bishop d7, castles, and rook c8, coming in ready for the attack. And you almost get a position that is a tempo down for white because of playing queen to d3 and then queen to d2. But in a lot of those positions, white is very happy in these sort of mainline dragons with the queen on a5. And there's an argument to be said that even with a full tempo down, white still maintains an edge in this position with accurate play. And I expect that was Jan's preparation. Now he continued with the prophylactic move king b1. The king's much safer on b1, defending a2 and off this diagonal. Knight c4 comes, standard move you have to take. You can't give up this great bishop. Rook takes c4, and now g4. But I expect this is a moment where Jan mixed up his preparation. Now, after bishop e6, Jan plays knight b3. And here, this is a standard move to kick the queen. And the question to Fabi is, where do you put this queen? Where is a good attacking square for the queen? The queen could retreat to d8, but now Fabi finds this really excellent move, queen a6, which is an amazing attacking square because it eyes on a2, which, although it's not an immediate threat, it becomes key to the game later. And I expect in this position, Jan mixed up his preparation and move order, and he should have played knight b3 first. Now the big difference is, if queen to a6 happens now, black runs into trouble with the bishop still on d7 because white can play e5. Now retreating will obviously be less than ideal. White can come forwards and there's all sorts of threats. And you can't take the pawn because of the tactic knight c5 coming into fork. And this bishop is the big problem. But now, after g4, bishop e6, knight b3. Now, after queen a6, there's no longer any e5 moves because I can just happily take the pawn and this bishop is no longer hanging. And this queen ends up on a much more active square of a6 rather than d8. Okay, bishop comes to d4. Very standard move in these lines to challenge the amazing dragon bishop. And Fabi brings in his last piece to the attack, rook a to c8. And now Jan plays g5, which is the fatal error. Even though he's mixed up his move orders here, there's potential to play on this position fine. White is not necessarily worse. There's a move, very interesting move, queen to g5 with the idea of queen to b5, trading off the queens now that black is very active with a potential attack. And g5 loses spectacularly to the phenomenal move which Fabi finds after a very long think. You can see that Fabi's got 1 hour here and he spends 20 minutes almost to find the amazing move knight takes e4. And the pawn is defended twice, but you can't take it either way. Because if you take with the f pawn, as in the game, then bishop takes on d4, and which we'll see. If you take with the knight, now we see why this amazing queen is on a6. Rook takes d4, and there's simply no way to recapture because queen takes a2 and queen a1 is checkmate. And not only are you a pawn up, but you still have a raging attack, which is why Jan chose to take with the f pawn. But now after bishop takes d4, you run into a similar problem, which is that after knight takes d4, again this a2 pawn is the problem. Rook takes c3, no problems being found by Fabi. And now, again, I cannot take because queen takes a2, queen a1 is checkmate. So Jan tries to hold on with a3, but now we continue the attack with queen to c4. Again, eyeing up this a2 and a1 checkmate. b3 was played. Alternatively, you could play knight takes e6, and now if we recapture, then we're going to be losing because we lose the rook. But here there's a beautiful intermezzo move. Rook takes c2 first, and then after the queen moves somewhere, then we can recapture this knight, and now we're just 2 pawns up, still with an attack. Which is why Jan chose b3. And now there's the queen's under attack, but we just need to find a calm move. Queen back to c5. We're a pawn up with a tripled up battery along the c file. Queen takes on a3, and Jan tries to generate something on the king side, but he's far too slow. Rook comes into c5, preparing rook takes a5, and after rook f1, rook c to f1, simply bishop takes b3. There's no way to recapture here because if knight takes, rook takes, queen takes, and you cannot block this because after check, king has to go to the a file, and then rook a5 is going to be fatal. Check, check, and the queen is gone, and it will be checkmate. So in this position, after bishop takes b3, Jan resigned as you simply can't take, but if you don't take, you're also being checkmated. Fantastic game by Fabiano, and a very unfortunate mix-up of preparation by Jan.